Okay. Hello and welcome to my channel, Haylee Marie Vintage. Today I have a super fun project for you guys. As always, I always say they're going to be super fun, and it's because I think they're super fun. For today, we have a 1940s Marilyn something, I think, right? Or Marian Martin pattern, which is a pattern that was like a mail order, and this specifically is this really cute dress with a contrast like scallopy collar. Any of you who've watched my channel where I do scallops know scallops are the enemy. So it'll be real, or I guess scalloped, not scallops. I love to eat scallops. I hate sewing scallops. I don't know. I'm excited to do this. I've had this project on my docket for a really long time. Oh, are you coming to say hi? Hello there. But I am just now finally getting around to doing it. I've literally had this sewing project since I started sewing, and it's just been sitting in my project basket. So we're finally gonna do it this summer, and these are the fabrics I'm gonna use. So this will be the collar, the contrast collar, which is this nice green color that I really like. And then this here will be the whole dress. So should be hopefully easy, fingers crossed. We're gonna head over to me cutting out the pattern. All right, here I am cutting this fabric. So one thing I want to point out on this process is definitely check the pattern layout on vintage patterns. However, a lot of times their pattern layouts are showing it on 36-inch wide fabric. So for example, in the layout for this one, they had you actually like fold the fabric in half like the long way, hot dog style, I suppose, then lay out the pieces that way. However, my fabric's wide enough to get the full length of the dress. So yeah, I just want to remind you guys that while you want to check the pattern layout, you don't necessarily have to follow it, and I'm not following it in this case. Cutting this was a breeze, not too many pieces, and they were all like similar enough that I just kind of got in a rhythm. And then for the last part, I am cutting out the scallops on the green fabric, and I am just folding this over 4 times so that way I can just cut them once instead of twice, because I need 4 pieces since they're going to be on each side. Hello, so we are at 1 o'clock today. It's pretty rainy and disgusting out, so I didn't really want to get out of bed this morning. So I didn't get around to starting my sewing project until noon. However, I think that, or I guess 1, I know what time is. However, I do think we are still in good shape. I looked through the instructions of this pattern and they look really straightforward. I actually figured this pattern was going to feel really complicated because I just feel like this dress doesn't look that straightforward, but it is really straightforward. So I still think we'll be able to wrap this project all in one day, which is super exciting and great. Then I can go about my weekend for Sunday. Sometimes things look really intuitive and then they're not. So the rest of my plans for this afternoon is just to sew, and then I've meal prepped, so I have my dinner ready to go whenever I decide I need to break for dinner. So let's go ahead and hop into this sewing. Alright, so here to start, I am doing all of my scallop markings. This I am doing first by putting the dots down that are recommended by the pattern, and then I am just going ahead and measuring a 1/2 inch from the edge, which is the seam allowance from this pattern, a couple of different places, and then I am just drawing in these chalk lines so that way I know where to sew. In the past, I've like free-handed scalloping, and it doesn't really work out well for me, so I've learned that it is really imperative that I draw this now. And then after that is done, I'm just following the instructions, which first have you assemble the scallop straps. So I am just sewing down the straight line first, which is the easy part, and then I am taking my time with the scalloped edge. And on a past video, a viewer had recommended making my stitches smaller while working on scallops to make them smoother, and I don't know if it made a difference, but I definitely took things slower and had the lines, because I made a lot of changes, so I'm not quite sure what made the difference, but they were definitely better than they have been in the past. And then I am clipping the corners and then turning these right side out, taking a lot of time pressing it to try to get everything looking as good as possible to make sure it's all basically straightforward and doesn't have any weird edges. So I'm doing this with a couple ways. I'm using tools to get the scalloped edge like all the way out, and then I am also just using my hands to kind of really roll and get the fabric to where the seam is right on the edge. And then with the scalloping out of the way, it is now time to work on the dress. I found this dress really easy to sew. However, they did have the instructions in an interesting order, so I'm going to walk you through pretty detailed on this pattern. First, we're just sewing up the 2 side seams. So I have my center back, my side back, and then my side front all sewn together in 3 panels, and I'm doing that twice. And then after that, it has me putting bias tape on each side, which I just found this step interesting because usually you do facings all at the end at once. I understand why they have you do it this way, but it was just an interesting thing to know. I should have used just a double fold bias tape because this ended up getting my measurements wrong. However, I totally used a single fold. First, I am pinning that, and then I am going ahead and I'm stitching it. And then after I stitch it down, I am then going ahead and understitching it to make sure everything sits exactly the way I want. And then after that is done, I am going ahead and hand stitching this down. Spooky is super clingy, so she is in my lap for all of this and demanding snuggles, but I'll never argue with her too much on that because I love having her around. And I'm trying to stay here as long as possible without moving, so I would normally pin this on my ironing board, however I'm pinning it here. But I'm just getting ready to baste the straps to where they go on the dress according to the notches and marks and the instructions, and then I am basting those in place. The next step is to sew up the back, which I am currently working on. It was here that I realized I should have used the double fold bias tape, so I'm going ahead and folding the whole back of the dress down and just sewing it that way. So then I will be hand stitching down the top of this dress again, which is my own fault. Here I am ironing that seam, and as you can see, it is not evenly matched, and I should have gone back and unpicked it and redone it, but I didn't. So this is how it looks currently as well. And then next up, I am marking all of my buttonholes onto the front center, so that way I know where I am placing those. I have started to do my markings as I go. It depends on the pattern if I decide to do this. If it's just darts, I go ahead and mark all the darts at the beginning since that's the first thing I sew, but I've now started with buttonholes and things like that, marking more as I go, so that way I remember to pay attention to those markings when I'm sewing and constructing. Here I am just folding over the edge and finishing the edge of the facing. I used to do this on the ironing board and sewing it down, but I now feel confident enough to just kind of eyeball sew it. And then after that, I am sewing the front to the dress. It is so exciting. It's really shaping up. And here I am attaching the facing to the front, and I am then, after I do this part, going ahead and understitching as far up as I can. I just understitch anytime I can because I think it makes the results turn out so much better. A lot of times these are not instructions, but I like to go ahead and do them. And then here I am in a process I don't show very often, which is how I pick my buttons. So I have my buttons sorted in tins of how many buttons they have. This pattern required 10 buttons, so I went to my 10 and up tin. Then from there, I'm just pulling things that I think match well. This is how I choose my buttons that are already in my stash. And then here I am getting ready to stitch down that facing. It is all pinned and ready to go. Spooky is very demanding in snuggles. I'm trying to get her to settle in, but she really is so sweet and wants all the love and kisses. She's like leaned up against my chest using her full body weight, and I absolutely think it's adorable when she does this. It's maybe not ideal when getting ready to sew, but it really is so cute, and I love that she wants to spend this much time with me. And then after that is done, we are ready to put in all the buttonholes. I have to say, learning to use my buttonhole foot slash setting on my machine has been a real lifesaver. I would not have enjoyed doing all 10 of these by hand or as bound buttonholes, and it wouldn't have really made sense for the garment to do it that way. So definitely, as always, encourage you to try to use the things on your machine you're scared of. I didn't use my buttonhole foot for a whole year that I had this machine, but now I absolutely couldn't live without it. Alright, so now we're ready for the hem. The hem around this dress is the bottom is kind of round, and you guys have requested that I talk a little bit more detail of how I do this type of hem to get it really, really neat. So the first thing I'm doing is finishing the bottom edge. You can do this however you want, be that hemming tape, bias tape, double fold over. In this case, I am doing it with my like tiny hem foot. I don't know what to call it. And then after that is done, I'm going ahead and I am basting in that finished edge. And I'm only doing each half of the garment individually, so I'm going from the front to the middle of the back, and then after that I am making a break because you will be gathering this and it's easier to have less gathering space when you do this. And then once you have this all basted and ready to like move the gathers around, essentially what you're going to do is you're going to grab where your seams are and you're going to measure that with your gauge, and then you're going to pull those gathering stitches to make it so the part in the middle actually fits really nicely to in between the seams, kind of like it's like hugging itself. I don't know how to explain it, but like you can feel when it's right because it just sits right. And then once you get it like that, you just double check how it looks in the middle and make sure it aligns at the same length as the sides. And then you go ahead and pin everything and then you iron it down. And on the other side, you will see a very, very neat hem. This just takes out the extra work of you like figuring out how to ease in this, like the gathering eases it for you so you don't have to kind of like use your brain. I'm not very good at easing things if I don't have those base gathering stitches. So this is just a trick that I learned from something a few projects ago that I just would highly recommend. And then when you finish that hem, you're just finishing it and stitching it down whatever way you prefer. I do it by hand. And then now I have moved on to stitching on the buttons, which is the final step in this project. And I can't wait to finish it up and show you. So we are ready for the reveal. All right, so you have seen the reveal. I hope you enjoyed seeing this dress out in the wild, I guess. I don't know, in the incredibly posed staged environment, realistically. This was a really fun and easy make. I enjoyed it, and it doesn't use that much yardage, so it's a great dress to have like in my back pocket, I guess, to use up certain amounts of my stash. But before I kind of get into the wrap up and kind of my final thoughts on this project, let's first jump into the section of what did it cost, where I'm going to go through the cost of what it took to make this garment. So we're gonna jump into that right now. All right, let's get into it. This is a pretty cheap project, all things considered, if you don't factor in the labor. My fabric was only $12 because I picked up the floral fabric for only $2 a yard. And then the green fabric, I only needed 1 yard of Akona cotton, which was like $6 or something like that. So it was about $12. That is a guesstimate since I've had this fabric for 3 years. I don't exactly know. The pattern I do exactly know. It was $13.87. I ordered this a really long time ago, and this is, I don't know, on track with about how much patterns cost. For the supplies, I am talking about the buttons and the bias tape. This is again a guesstimate because I don't actually know how much I paid for the buttons, and then for the bias tape I didn't use the whole thing, so I just guessed and came up with $5. And then for the labor, this project was pretty quick and took me only 7.5 hours. So that comes to a total of $187.50 according to the wage of a seamstress job I found in Seattle. So all of that added up to $218.37 if you factor in the labor. This is a pretty simple dress. My bet is in a factory setting. It can be made much quicker, but I still think it's concerning that you can find a lot of these dresses for like $10 because that means whoever is doing the labor is not getting paid very much. That said, this was a pretty cheap dress to make since it was about $30 of supplies. Since I'm obviously not paying myself for the labor, $30 for a dress like this is a win for me for sure, especially with it being 100% cotton. But that summarizes how much this one cost. Now that I've gone over the cost, this was a cheaper project, all things considered. It didn't take me that long to make, and then the materials themselves were really affordable. So let's kind of talk about this guy. So this is really cute. I will say, while I think the straps are such a cute idea, I don't know if this cotton's just too stiff. I actually don't use Kona cotton anymore because it's personally a little like too stiff for my liking. I know a lot of people love it for vintage projects, but I find it just like too stiff, and I actually think the best part about a lot of vintage cottons is how soft they are. I think I might like this better in a like swishier fabric. However, I do still think this is really cute and I'm gonna wear it. I absolutely adore the silhouette of this princess dress, and it's like definitely not too tight. It's definitely pretty comfy, and I definitely really enjoy that aspect. And I also love the buttons down the front. I am looking to swap these out eventually for a different set of green buttons. I ended up going with the green even though the pink won the vote because I didn't give like people the full picture where like it has like green sleeves essentially. Once I like put the pink buttons and I was looking at it with the green sleeves, it just felt kind of like a lot, and so I wanted the buttons and the sleeves to match better. As far as like mistakes I made, these maybe aren't anchored in the best. I could have definitely done a better job. There's like a little tiny angle with raw fabric here, and then the back, I should have just taken the time to undo and redo this. It's like not even. I have no one to blame but myself. I did it and I was like, oh, that like isn't exactly right, and then I ignored it. So that's my own responsibility. They're definitely supposed to be like perfectly even and not have this like little tiny bit of like non-evenness. I definitely will be making this again. The other thing that would be really easy to do is just attach either a halter, or like it would be really easy to modify this dress shape into a different set of sleeves. This isn't a sleeve though, a strap. It would be really easy to fashion this into like just a straight strap. And then as for the scallops themselves, I don't know, there's like weird, I don't know, I'll see if you guys can see it if I hide my face. There's like weird like bunching at the corners, and I tried to be really good about clipping so that way that wouldn't happen. But it still happened, and so I don't quite know why I get that like bunching. So if you have any hot tips on that, I'm always happy to learn something. These are the best scallops for sure I've ever done. They have like the most rounded shape and like consistently matched with each other, so I am really happy with these. Honestly, I don't even know why I use facings when recipes when patterns call for it, just because I really prefer the simpleness of a bias binding. I just think I like prefer it to like the way facings just kind of like flap around and are annoying. So right now I'm kind of trying to decide if I'm gonna go rogue on all my patterns and use a bias facing instead of using a facing just because I think they're more comfortable. This was a little bit more of a simple project, but I hope you guys enjoyed watching it and it maybe inspires some future makes for you this summer. I'm so excited to wear this dress in the hot weather since it is 100% cotton. It's gonna do wonderfully. That is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, you can always leave me a tip over on Ko-fi. I always really appreciate it. And then you can always do the normal free things to support my channel, such as liking and commenting down below and hitting that subscribe button. I would love to have you around, and I will see you next time. Bye!